decades, how have you seen a shift in the recording industry in regards to the emergence of electronic musicians?
Well, the electronic musicians that existed in the industry have been there for several decades. And it really was the classical community that started with the electronic music field.
Okay.
You had a lot of pioneers that began sort of the introduction of oscillators and envelope generators into that, with Moog's Mothership being sort of the big, everybody knew about that particular technology when it was released. And it was incorporated a lot by Boulez. There were other professors out there that were trying to incorporate electronic music in its true sense. They didn't want electronic music to be a violin. They didn't want it to be a grand piano. We had those sounds already. So they were looking for actually new instruments. An 808, which is one of the most common hip-hop productions for electronic music, those drum machines made by Roland became sort of the whole heartbeat of an entire genre of music, of hip-hop, R&B, soul music, where they were the backbone of the actual music bed. The technology, I don't know if it emerged or if it's just the ease of use of it became so popularized, and the skills that we were learning on that technology, nobody loved theremin until we put it into a sci-fi movie, and then suddenly that sounds cool, and the Beach Boys pick it up. And then the Beach Boys make it famous, and now you can find it in other productions and stuff. And if you've got a musical idea, you can put it down. And I'd love to quote Dr. Raul Marciano, a former professor of mine, who said, every musician has an audience, and every audience has a musician nowadays, and they deserve each other. A producer is producing a product, and that might mean that you're in the back of the room and you're telling an engineer and musicians what to do, and you're fiscally responsible for the end product to a record label. Well, that's a producer. But if you're the person that is making the music, if you're the person that is actually recording all of the music, you're the one doing all the vocals on the music, be them hip-hop, lyrical, melodic vocals, or any other genre that exists out there, and you are pulling together this whole package for an album or a single, you technically produced that product. And that's sort of where the urban genres come in. You've got your Timbalands, you've got your Dr. Dre's, after their career as an artist became more of a producer and trying to bring up new talent and stuff like that. And those individuals like to call themselves a producer, and they deserve it.
It can't be defined as a binary, as either musician or producer. You think it's a blend of the two. It's kind of, by using electronic means, they are playing music, so they're being a musician, but they're also bringing it together. They're cultivating sounds and putting them out, so in that sense, they're a producer.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we've always had them. They've been throughout the industry. They've become more prevalent because it's been easier to do that. You didn't have to walk into a Hit Factory. You didn't have to walk into a Criteria Studios anymore to produce those quality sounds that you were looking for.
What would your response be to electronically produced sounds?
Well, I know this is going to be unpopular, but I kind of take the view of Roger Scruton that I think there is a difference, for instance, between someone who has learned how to play a classical guitar or learned how to play a violin or a piano or whatever, as opposed to someone who uses electronic means to marshal pre-made sounds and to amalgamate them. I recognize that there's an art to that and that there is a skill to it, but I do think there's a very real difference between the two.
Would you say there's a hierarchy of difference in terms of one is better than the other, or do you think they can't be compared in that manner?
I think both have their virtues. Okay. But I would say that because the craft of learning how to play an actual instrument is more difficult and therefore more virtuous, that yes, I think the craft of learning an instrument is more difficult and therefore more virtuous than the digitized or the use of synthetic sounds already pre-made. Okay.
Most people, especially older generations, don't view electronic instruments such as synthesizers, keyboards, and computers themselves to be instruments. The performance of John Cage's piece, 4 minutes and 33 seconds, has completely changed the way people view music and what music can and can't be. This piece consisted of 4 minutes and 33 seconds of complete silence, where the goal of the audience was to listen to the natural, ambient sounds around them and view these sounds as musical. John Cage's philosophy drastically changed what music can and can't be, as he viewed all sounds, whether created intentionally or unintentionally, with a typical instrument or with a non-typical instrument, to be valid in the world of music. People often also say that playing electronic music is like going up to a computer and just hitting play. Now, this is definitely the case with some artists, and this definitely happens more than it should. However, the idea of just hitting play exists in every other instrument known to man. For example, there are over 300 different pop songs that contain the same 4 chords. The idea of taking the easy way out exists within every instrument family. Electronic instrumentation is a fairly new field in music, so of course some people are choosing very boring and typical options. However, there are a lot of people spending a great deal of time learning these instruments and learning their possibilities. Using electronic means to make sounds is just another form of communicating some feeling or emotion. People that don't recognize electronic instruments as such quite simply don't understand the language that millennials speak. Since the beginning of human life on Earth, music has been one of the primary ways in which people express themselves. The fact that we now do this through new electronic instruments is no different from any other change in instrumentation that has occurred over the history of music, and this is simply another step in the evolution of human communication. The fact that we are changing, evolving, and developing the ways through which we communicate ourselves can only be seen as a positive thing.